The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Wednesday, the 5th of August, 2025. We have a great show for you today. But first up, conference, everybody. It is the Moment of Truth Children's Health Defense Conference in Austin, November the 7th to the 9th. Now, 2025, of course, this year, the planning committee is still putting together the people that are going to speak. But I can tell you, it is going to be a very important conference. I'm very excited about it. I can't wait to meet so many of yours. Give big hugs because it's important that we do that right now. And one other bit of news before we bring on our wonderful guest. CHD TV are hiring. You want to work with us? You want to be part of our tiny little team at CHD TV? It is a broadcast operations producer. So you're going to be backing up Lou here behind the scenes and working really closely with myself and Naomi and the team. It's a 7-day-a-week morning show that you know that we do, and we need help here. So if you know anybody that wants to be part of our production team, please look in the show notes and get yourself in on that broadcast operations producer. It's a great position, and it's so wonderful working at CHD. You're going to love it. So pass that around fast. We need someone soon and quick. And we are really excited to be working with one of you or someone that you know. So do apply for that immediately. Right. What's in our food? We've got to talk about this, everyone. Let's take a break from vaccines and everything else. Let's talk about food. It's vitally important. And there's no one better than Kelly Ryerson, best known as the Glyphosate Girl. Let's bring her on. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be back on. It's been a little bit.
It has been a little bit, and you've been incredibly busy, and I'm so proud of you. We all are so proud of you. We're watching what you're doing. But I did take a look at your bio, and it says Kelly Ryerson works at the intersection of agriculture and health. We want to know what that means.
Yes, it is. It's interesting because my own personal health experience brought me to that intersection because I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about what really I was consuming outside of, eating fruits and veggies. And I had an autoimmune crisis probably now 10 years ago, and it was horrible. And I didn't know where it was coming from. And after 20 different doctors that I went to go and see, and like every specialist under the moon, I finally went and saw a doctor who said that she thought I should try giving up gluten. And frankly, I had so many different issues around my body, like rashes and like nervous system issues and losing hair and digestive problems, that I really couldn't imagine that giving up gluten could possibly do much, particularly since all these doctors were starting to hint, mostly because I'm a woman, that my ailments were probably imagined or psychological. So I'd been layered on different medications, so 2 different antidepressants, a benzodiazepine, gabapentin, steroids, just like the pharmaceutical bomb put all over my body, which of course made things that much worse. Anyway, so I tried giving up gluten, and suddenly I started getting better. I started eating more cleanly, meaning, more organically, and I started getting better. And I was very mad that I couldn't have gluten anymore, because that meant like all of my favorite foods were out the door. So I went to Columbia University, has a conference every other year at their celiac center, and they were talking about this new epidemic of gluten sensitivity in our country and like what's behind it. And so I went to Columbia, and I was sitting there, and they said, we actually don't even know if it's the gluten or if it's something else. And so I went to the microphone. I said, well, are farmers spraying anything on the food? Not having any sense at all about farming, mind you, like at all. And they didn't know. And so then someone from General Mills was there, because he was talking about how they are able to source Cheerios that are gluten-free. He came and he found me afterwards and he said, so Roundup the weed killer is sprayed on a lot of the grain right before harvest as to use it as a harvest aid. And I said, well, does it wash off? Like, do they wash it off? And he said, no, it's systemic. So that means like it's in the grain that's being harvested after they do this spray. So my world was like, oh my gosh, that really can't be great. I went and I dug in deeply into this subject and found all of these scientists that have written about these major health concerns about all the things that it can do to your body. But they were smeared online, right? Because the money and the powers that be in big ag were there to make sure that they were discredited because they want to continue selling their pesticides. So I started digging even further and further into this agricultural piece and learned not only about pesticides, but also the way different farming practices can dramatically impact the amount of nutrient density that is found in the food. And you have a lot of people out there that are talking about farming solutions and the importance of soil health as it applies to the environment and planetary health. But where I focus is how do those choices that the farmer makes that on their farm and in terms of like how they're treating their soil and what the practices are for harvest, how does that directly impact human health? And so it's this little intersection, and that's how I've gotten there. And actually, I spend a lot of time working and talking with farmers, and it is just such a wonderful group of people that I just never knew I'd be working with, and it's wonderful.
So Kelly, a question that we get a lot is people who've been gluten-free for some time and they still have these like nagging tummy aches. And when we talk to them and say, well, what are you eating now? Well, I'm eating gluten-free bread, or I'm eating gluten-free pasta, or I'm eating gluten-free whatever. And we know that that this is not clean food. If you walk down the supermarket to the gluten-free aisle, you're going to see packets of stuff. It's a huge business now, gluten-free food, but it's not okay. It's not good food, is it? Or is it?
No, it isn't. And it's so interesting because I've been to a lot of functional medicine conferences, and this is the thing that the doctors say in the beginning. Gluten-free food is not health food. It just doesn't have gluten. But gluten itself, that oftentimes isn't even the largest offender unless you have celiac disease. You're so right. This has become a really huge business, and people that have to give up gluten, including myself, like you feel really desperate and panicky when you first have that diagnosis and you realize you have to be gluten free. So what most people do is they go to the grocery store and they look at the shelves and they're like, "Oh, thank goodness, there's the gluten free Oreo." Or there's the gluten-free whatever it is, or the gluten-free pizza. And if you really look at these things, unfortunately, because they don't have gluten in them, they will, and gluten really adds a texture to a lot of these baked goods in particular. And so when you don't have that, they have to add so many different gums, and the gums that are in there, like the xanthan gum and guar gum, these fillers that are in there to give this stuff the consistency that gluten once had, can be extremely irritating, like to the point that now a lot of times I can't go to gluten-free bakeries because I know I'm going to have such bad like stomach issues afterwards. And it's such a shame. And so it's really about this mentality of trying to change what your habits are, which is so hard because I personally think that bread is one of the best things on this during this lifetime in this world. And so it's hard.
Well, it is hard. My favorite thing in the world is a big French baguette with tons of butter. Yeah,
Exactly. I was gonna say baguette's my thing. Like I miss that so much.
I know. I miss it too. Right. Well, let's talk about the fight to get rid of these pesticides, these chemicals on our food, because you're full on into it. And we see now in the media and stuff that the big companies are trying to fight against, and they want a liability shield against the pesticides. So why would they want that? What is going on?
Yeah, so this is so unbelievably terrible. I'm sure your listeners will know that this is very similar to the vaccine liability shield. It obviously has been very effective so that vaccine manufacturers can go and pretty much do whatever they want with no fear whatsoever of retribution. This is what they're trying to do now with pesticides. And the reason why is because the glyphosate cancer lawsuit. So there are over 100,000 people that have sued Bayer, which owns Monsanto. They bought Monsanto, and that's the manufacturer of Roundup, which has the active ingredient glyphosate. So glyphosate has been highly connected to cancer. There are all these studies that show that it causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so you have all these plaintiffs that are coming out and suing the company. Now, it's actually a really successful law team that put together all of the evidence, and they have all these internal documents from Monsanto that show that they knew that there was a connection between cancer and exposure to glyphosate, but they covered it up. So this is a huge problem, and Bayer bought them Bayer bought Monsanto right as the litigation was kicking off. So I think that they very, very significantly underestimated just what a strong case this was going to be. And so now these lawsuits are costing them billions. I think the latest is something like $16 billion Bayer has set aside to settle these glyphosate claims. They do not want to put a label on the side of the bottle to say that this has been connected with cancer in any way. And it is crazy. Like, I'm talking about a label that even one of the judges proposed, just saying some studies show that this might be connected with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. They won't do it. So they are just doubling down, and they are just leaving themselves open to this like lifetime of litigation against themselves. And so what they said is, okay, I know what we can do. And this is like so outlandish, by the way. So their plan, in order to get their stock price back up, because it is massively, massively lost value, and there's a strong chance that this litigation could bankrupt Bayer, this enormous pharmaceutical company. So instead of just being honest about it, they're like, okay, we need to just no longer be liable. And so what they're trying to do is transfer all liability over to the EPA. So they can say, oh, even if we wanted to label it as causing cancer, we can't, because the EPA won't let us. They don't agree. Now, we know that the EPA is such a corrupt entity. And I myself have gone many times to the EPA with scientists and doctors and presented this research, not only on cancer, but also significant issues with glyphosate and fertility, like a really enormous connection. And it's in infertility. I mean, it's just, actually, we can get into that if you want to, but it's not great. So, and so we know that the EPA is totally working on behalf of the corporations. So what they've done now is they've tried, this is their third attempt. So they have, last year they put in a bill that was called the Agricultural Label Uniformity Act. So that was like, in different states, you can't have different opinions. So in the state of California, for example, you can't say that glyphosate causes cancer because it doesn't agree with what the EPA says federally. So they're just trying to take away this state level failure to warn. That is a right in most states, that you can say, well, you failed to warn me that it could cause cancer. That kind of litigation usually falls under state law. So they're trying to take away state law and just make it EPA law. So recently what they've done is they went into a spending bill, and this is what I've been working on for now many months. They went into a spending bill, an appropriations bill, and they slid in some language very quietly into Section 453 of the House Appropriations Bill. And what they are saying is that they are claiming that no money should be spent to change the label, even if there's new evidence that shows that a chemical might cause a problem. So they're saying that in order to change a label, you have to do a whole new health assessment, which would take like oftentimes upwards of a decade. So they're effectively freezing into place anything right now that the EPA believes. So this also is crazy, because this means that Bayer, if this went into place, Bayer could say, we know it causes cancer. Can you please update that, EPA? And then, wink, wink, the EPA won't update it. And they can't, and they won't. And so then they are shielded from liability. So this is just insanity. And it's like they're out there saying this is pro-farmer. And of course, it's not pro-farmer. It's entirely not pro-farmer. So very frustrating.
Kelly, I heard, and I don't know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I heard from someone who I trust that this is actually a bigger, more aggressive fight than even the vaccine issue. This is really a fight that is causing a lot of issues, let's put it that way, because it's so fierce. And so, I mean, how powerful is the big ag, the big chemical companies? Because I'm hearing that this is almost unsafe in areas.
Oh my gosh. Yes. unsafe is what I would say. It is very scary. There are dark ops that have been operated, within Monsanto and this agricultural chemical world. And it is bigger. It is more ferocious than even pharma. And the reason for that is that you have so many people that are involved, because it's not just the corporations versus us. It's the corporations, it's the government, it's this huge farming community. It's our entire agricultural system that frankly is built on a very weak house of cards. It is just because we see on the farms, and for those who don't know, we have a massive, massive crisis in this country in that we've ruined our soil. It's a national health crisis, like a national health and just a national security crisis, actually, because without soil health, we're not going to be able to grow food much longer. And these pesticides, just like they impact us, they impact the microbes in the soil, and it makes it very, very hard to grow anything in this soil, which now has turned into dirt because it's not really alive anymore. It is very hard to grow anything without tons and tons of chemicals and fertilizers. So it's a very expensive proposition. The only reason why it's financially working right now is because the government is paying so much in subsidies to keep this toxic system alive. The lobbies are insane. And another thing to note that I hadn't before, these chemical companies that we're talking about are foreign chemical companies. So it's Bayer, which is German, and then it's ChemChina, which is Chinese. So this proposal is so insane because it is offering this gift to foreign chemical companies to continue selling to us no matter what it does to American bodies and the soil and farmers. It is allowing them to continue selling it. And moreover, a lot of those chemicals that ChemChina, and particularly ChemChina, sells to us, they banned in China because they're so toxic. So the idea that this is so preposterous, I'm getting angry thinking about it, it's so preposterous that we would have any kind of liability shield for foreign polluters. It's just crazy. But yes, you're right. The powers that be are feeling insurmountable. And one of the things that I've been working on is, because this was primarily Republican led in this case, but there are Democrats that also support big ag for sure. But this push has really been led by the Republicans. And I've been making an enormous call to the constituents, the Republican constituents who voted on a MAHA platform and are all about making America healthy again, that they are those Congress people that are pushing for this are completely out of touch with their constituents. No one wants this except for maybe a very small few that stand to benefit. So it is really an enormous political fight. I was really happy to see that Bloomberg picked up a discussion of it yesterday, because mainstream media kind of isn't touching it, much like the vaccine, issue, because clearly they're also in bed with all the powers that be and all the money involved in agricultural chemical companies. Politico, for example, is sponsored by Bayer. So you're not going to see a whole lot coming out of concern with this pesticide liability shield.
It's the same old story over and over again. I'm interested in what Bobby's going to do. I mean, September, we're going to get the first bits of our announcement. Is he going to go vaccines or food? Sounds to me like food is as big, if not bigger issue. I hate to say that, people, because I'm Miss Vaccine Girl. This is Glyphosate Girl I'm sitting with here. But I can see in the unvaccinated children still sickness. It has to be the food as a major part of it. It just has to be. People are still not getting it. And I don't mean to sound cruel, but people don't get it. I can see people in our movements putting terrible stuff in their car.
Oh my gosh, it's just so hard to watch that, and my eyes are wide just because I come from the food world, and we're, but that being said too, and something that we were talking about before we started here is that so I'm Glyphosate Girl. I am so upset about our toxic food system. But one thing that I do is I would say that I am a 70% clean eating person. I'm now a 30% eating out. And it's a balance that I've been able to make, because what I was finding is originally when I started just, being really, really strict about what I was eating, it really put limits on me socially. And that's depressing. And so what I've been able to do is I can tell when I've eaten too much that isn't clean and isn't organic, and I'll back off. But I make sure my whole kitchen is super, super clean. So most of the things I'm eating are, and then I allow myself that time to be able to go and just be social, thinking that too will, provide health benefits, which I think is true.
It's so hard these days to feed your family correctly because there's, like we've talked about before we came on there, there's appeal on the food, even organic food now. It's just like it's washed in stuff that's disgusting. Like it's everywhere in everything. And you go to a supermarket and literally, I don't know how much of it is safe to eat. What's your recommendation to that young family who don't have a lot of money, but they
Mhm.
want to feed their kids and themselves right?
So there are definitely some choices that you can make, and it is so confusing and it's so hard and it's really depressing. And when you're talking about appeal, and for those who don't know what this is a coating that is put on the outside of some fruits and veggies, specifically like I'm thinking avocados, but it can be a lot of different things. And it originally was just meant for conventional food, and which conventional meaning non-organic. But now it's been approved for use in organic food, and actually it has been used on there for several years. It just they were just doing it quietly. And so I would go into the back of I would ask if things had a peel on them, and they wouldn't know because they only labeled it on the crate in the back. And so you can't even know if this appeal has been used on it. But I do know that a lot of people have gotten in touch with me and said they're having allergic reactions to it, like their mouth is burning and all kinds of things. And so what a ridiculous thing that is. And it's a big money play because there are big dollars behind appeal, and just trying it's like some tech guys that thought this would be an amazing innovation, and they had all these connections, all this venture capital money came in. And so, it's being shoved down our throat, really, literally. So that is very frustrating. But there are certain grocers, and I don't have them on the top of my head, but I know Natural
Natural
Grocers,
grocers.
Sprouts. I know Whole Foods is not good. They're happy to take it. And Costco for a while wasn't taking it, although I now heard someone complain that they were taking Appeal Food. But,
Kelly,
okay, so let's just like go back though. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
I was just going to say natural. I've got to give a shout out to natural grocers
Oh,
because that's where I shop. Do you know the natural grocers? They are amazing.
they're so amazing. And I don't have one in my area, and I'm so sad I don't because they're so good.
Yeah, they are good. Okay, so carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean
Um,
to.
so, so this being said, you still can just do your best. Okay. So this is like what I do to do my best. And I too hate spending tons and tons of money on organic food. It can be really expensive. And so I am a Costco shopper, and this is where I go and I buy things in bulk. And I am, I just I actually don't enjoy going to Costco because it's always a really long line, and it's not exactly like the most atmospheric situation. But I go and I buy just large amounts of things, and I do baking with them, and I pre-prepare things. And but they are really committed to that, and you can really get good value for that. Um, a lot of times I am shopping at farmers markets, of course, and there's so many more that are popping up around in so many different cities. And even if something isn't labeled organic, you can go and you can talk to the farmer that's there and just ask them about their practices, see what they do. A lot of times you'd be surprised. A lot of these farmers actually that are very pro soil health, they're called regenerative farmers. They may not be labeled and certified as organic, but they also use very little in the way of pesticides. And so, but that's the kind of thing that you have to go and you ask them. And frankly, like just being honest, it can be embarrassing because you feel, like you're annoying them by going and asking. And still to this day, sometimes I feel like people watch me when I go up and I say, "So what are you spraying?" You don't want to be that person each time, but it's worth it because then you're going to be able to have that food that is less sprayed. So other things that I would recommend is going, if you haven't already, to Environmental Working Group and seeing what their Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen are. They look to see what pesticide residues are they're finding on different food. And so you can make those decisions. Like a lot of times berries are not good to pick because they spray so many things on them. I recently learned that, and this is terrible because I have been like such a potato person. I recently realized that potatoes are terribly, terribly contaminated. And it makes sense because they're there in the soil. They use these chemicals to harvest. They also spray onto potatoes a chemical that can prevent the sprouting so that they can last longer and they can store them for a while. And it's a chemical that is banned actually in Europe, and I guess we're happy to use here, of course. So
That's
potatoes are something you'd want to buy organically, and that's the kind of list that it can be really helpful to have with you when you're shopping.
Kelly, just one more question on this before I ask you another question before we go. We've only got 3 minutes left. But listen, my big concern is the pregnant woman. So the pregnant woman that now is following us and understands, right, I'm not getting any vaccines, that's great, but is still eating glyphosate. What could be the effects on the fetus with glyphosate? Do we have any studies on that?
Yes, we have significant studies. And actually, this is what I brought to the EPA because I find it so horrendous. This glyphosate passes through the placenta into the developing fetus. And I know this because I, first of all, read the studies that show it does, but I also sent my daughter's baby tooth that formed in utero into a lab and it came back positive for glyphosate in it. So this is fully contaminating your baby. So you really need to think about what you are eating. Another interesting study that came out from Dr. Shauna Swan from, she is a famous and fabulous toxicologist at Mount Sinai. She did a study testing urinary levels of glyphosate in second trimester women. And then she went and she measured the distance between the vagina and the anus of the baby girls. And she found that the higher the level of glyphosate in the urine, the longer that distance was between the vagina and the anus, which is a masculinization of our baby girls because it's extremely, extremely endocrine disrupting. So now we have this situation, and that is, believe it or not, that study didn't get out very far, and it is so stunning because what that is an androgenization, which is what you're seeing when you start messing with hormones in this country. Similarly, if you are trying to get pregnant, understand that when the guy is eating anything with glyphosate on it, it's going down, it's crossing the blood testes barrier and going into the semen and kills sperm. So this is very important to get the guys on board as well if they'll have motility issues and not have enough sperm count to actually be able to impregnate you. So that is another concern. It also goes and it impacts the ovarian follicles directly and can cause the embryo not to implant into the side of the uterus. So if you're struggling with infertility, which so many people are, and it's so heartbreaking, I have so many friends that this has been a really long road. This would be a really important thing to go and just be sure you're trying to limit as much as possible, including when you get your period, don't use a tampon that isn't organic because it has a lot of glyphosate in it. And because cotton is a crop that's sprayed with it. So that's another thing just to keep in mind as well.
Kelly, it's just horrific. I mean, I just know that the average young mom has no idea about any of this.
No.
So thank you for sounding the alarm on that. What's the solution to this pesticide problem? And also, is Maha doing anything about it? Are they good?
So Maha is trying. Maha is definitely trying. I think that hands are really tied because Maha doesn't seem to have much sway over the EPA or USDA, particularly the EPA. The EPA has put into place someone that is the most famous, most successful soybean association lobbyist as a high person in pesticides, and just immediately went out and approved a pesticide that's been banned, and it's really, really disappointing. But we know Bobby's in there. We know where his heart is. And so we can feel confident that he's doing what he can in his power for sure. And hopefully some new studies will be coming out of NIH, maybe. That's something he's in charge of to maybe focus on this a little bit more. So I have hope.
Yeah, I do too. And we have a lot of hope because we have you, Kelly. And thank you for all the education you continually give us. We must get you on more to keep us updated. So where can people follow you? We know you're Glyphosate Girl on social media.
I'm Glyphosate Girl on social media, and I also have a website where you can just get it. It's very it's good introductory material if you're new to this topic. My website is Glyphosate Facts. So you can go .com. You can go there and you can just learn the basics about this. I have research that's tagged, and I write some articles there sometimes. And you can also find under articles, if you go there, you can sign up to help fight the liability shield. And another quick way to sign up to help fight the liability shield, and I need like all voices, is to go to stoppoison.org. And you'll go there and you can sign up on a form and I'll contact you with calls to action.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Kelly Ryerson, thank you for your time and giving us a good old 30 minutes, which nobody gets on CHD TV anymore. Thank you for all the work you're doing and keeping us educated. We really, truly appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be back on. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Kelly. Okay, everybody. Well, now I'm going to hand the show over to Mary, and she is going to be interviewing Kristina Kristen with her new book. And then we're going to go to our medical professional story of the day. And I'll see you tomorrow on Financial Rebellion with Catherine Austin-Fitz and Carolyn Betts.
Good morning, Children's Health Defense. Great to see you. And it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome today Kristina Kristen, the author of an important new book, Beyond Just Genes, Welcome to the Energetic Revolution. And I am delighted to note that Kristina served on the Children's Health Defense Board for 6 years and was instrumental in bringing CHD to where it is now. So it's really a great pleasure to bring you on, Kristina.
Mary, it's such a great pleasure to be back here with you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, we're really delighted because it's all about health, and that's really what your book is about. And also just to note that not only were you on the board, but you authored many articles that are here on the Children's Health Defense website. So really great to have you back. So you've just published a book that has done super well on Amazon. And just to give a little bit about your background to our audience, you're educated at Harvard University's Lifestyle Medicine program. You serve as an adjunct chemistry professor, and you deeply understand the biochemical processes that fuel our body. And you have been working for a long time about health and disease, and you have had a pivotal insight: optimal health and disease hinge on the mitochondria. So the book, Beyond Just Genes, Welcome to the Energetic Revolution, is really to empower readers to take control of their health with practical, evidence-based, mitochondria-centered lifestyle protocols. So I want to start with the first question, Kristina. What inspired you to write this book, and why do you believe that mitochondrial health is so important?
My inspiration basically has been sort of growing for years to write this book. It was basically just waiting to be written by me. And what I wanted to do is essentially to empower people, help empower people to regain and reclaim their natural state of health. And to me, as I had been deeply diving into, through my research and exploration, into what is the foundation, what are the most powerful levers of health that bring about health, it was really interesting. Everywhere I looked, inevitably, all roads did not lead back to Rome. They all led back to mitochondria. It was really, truly astonishing and fascinating to me. And by that, what I mean is almost every we call them metabolic illnesses or lifestyle illnesses, every one of them has the fingerprints of mitochondria as the foundation or the fulcrum of where the issues start.
So for people who may not be familiar, explain to us, what is a mitochondria and where is it? Like, how did it get there? How is it that it's so significant? Because it seems like up until very recently, people kind of focused on the cell and maybe cellular health, but they didn't really talk so much about the powerhouse of the cell, I think, is mitochondria now known. So tell us like a little bit of backstory so that people can really be up to speed.
Yeah, I mean, you almost don't know where to start, because you can do hours and hours of lecture on exactly what your question is asking. But just to distill it and put it in a nutshell, so we are derivatives of two cell lines. We are not just the genetic, we don't inherit only the DNA chromosomes from our mother and father. That's one line. We also inherit the DNA, a separate set of genomes from our mitochondria. This is something that's absolutely unbelievable, that it's not really mainstream knowledge. It's known within the academic world and those who focus on this topic. But if you were to ask 9 out of 10 people, they do not understand that, basically you have your mitochondrial genome, which you inherit purely from your mother. It's a maternal heritage. And so versus your nuclear DNA, which you inherit half from your father and half from your mother, your mitochondria DNA actually only come from your mother. So that's one, like, oh my goodness, why don't we all know this?
Yeah.
That factoid. And beyond that, so the story goes that somewhere in the proximity of about 1.5 billion years ago, you had, these single-celled organisms, and somehow two bacteria, different types of bacteria, one was aerobic and one was anaerobic. Aerobic means using oxygen, and one means not using oxygen. They found a way of joining forces. So the mitochondria are the aerobic version of these single-celled organisms that got inside of the anaerobic organism, which is a eukaryotic cell now. So in essence, this is called a symbiont or symbiotic relationship that they formed, which was mutually beneficial to both. And what is understood now is that this was one of the most seminal historical, let's say, thresholds that was met, beyond which it was possible to have multi-celled and more complex organisms. So basically, the mitochondria became more and more and more focused on producing energy within the cell, and the eukaryotic cell became more focused on function and movement and structure and those components. And yeah.
No, go ahead. So that's how the mitochondria came to be seen as the powerhouse. They became specialized in energy, and the other things became more specialized in other functions. Is that correct?
Correct. But I have to say, this is where it gets even more interesting. In fact, in the last 2 decades, it has become the idea behind the notion that mitochondria are only powerhouses, and they have always, been sort of coined to be the powerhouses. This title is now outdated. Now we know that actually they're not only the energy producers of, for the cell, which in and of itself is a fast, just an incredible task that they have to perform. They are, in fact, what are now termed and coined to be the chief operating organelles of the cell, meaning they run the show. They are actually living, communicating, signaling a network of trillions and trillions of bioengines within our cells that actually run the show. They run
I love that. So the mitochondria are the COOs of the cells. Yeah. So tell us, what do you mean by bioengine? You just use that and you talk about that in the book. What does that mean, and what's its implication for our everyday health?
Oh my goodness. Well, Mary, so this is where it just, for me, I just could not wait to relay this and to shout it from the rooftops. Bioengine, bio means life, engine, we all know what engine is. And all of us know, for example, everybody knows the importance of an engine in a car, or an engine in a boat, or an engine on a plane. We know that engine is the most important element of something that needs to perform a function, right?
Sure.
And so within our cells, these mitochondria are the equivalent of our engines. So what they do is they take in the food that we eat, the fuels that we eat in the form of food, and the oxygen that we breathe. And through biological processes, these biochemical processes, they transform that food into the cellular currency, which is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is basically the energetic currency for every cell within our bodies. So in essence, if you think of when you put gas in your car, basically the car engine transforms that chemical energy into movement within your car. That's the same thing that our bioengine mitochondria do within our cells. And
yeah, tell us about this graph about ATP, because it's fascinating, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. So let me just say that there was a time on this planet Earth where there was no oxygen. And so cells without oxygen had to metabolize glucose or food anaerobically without oxygen. And this is a very, very inefficient, non-efficient process. It's called glycolysis. And so if we just look at the numbers per glucose molecule, glucose is a simple sugar, per glucose molecule, that anaerobic process of glycolysis produces only 2 ATP per glucose. So keep that number in mind. So two ATP molecules are produced per glucose molecule anaerobically. Now think about this. With the advent of joining forces with the mitochondria, when the mitochondria are also within the cell, that same glucose molecule now, instead of only producing 2 ATP, now produces 38 ATP total. Mm-hmm. So it's unimaginable how profound that is in terms of the capacity that you gain by having mitochondria within the cell in terms of energetics and energy production. So you go from 2 to 38 per glucose molecule.
Yeah. So the mitochondria are a good investment, I think, is what you're saying. The return is high.
The return is very, very high. It's so basically it's profound. It's actually profound. That's why they are so foundational to our health.
Yeah. And in any person's body, Kristina, would it be possible that the mitochondria are top performers in your liver cells, but the mitochondria are not working very well in your heart or in your arms? Is that possible?
Oh, for sure. So even the mitochondria themselves are specialized within the particular cells. First of all, as I mentioned before, they're dynamic. They fuse. They separate, and they have a reproductive cycle. They're living beings, entities. So within each tissue, let's say a heart tissue, a brain tissue, a liver tissue, kidney tissue, they are not the same necessarily. They have, like I said, they're specialized for those particular cells, and the higher energetic tissues have more of them. So the heart tissue, because it's obviously it needs energy constantly. Your brain, your heart, and your liver have the highest numbers of mitochondria. And so in essence, when you do have some sort of a mitochondrial dysfunction, that is exactly why those are typically the first organs where you see these deficits in the form of symptoms. And so yes, so basically you can have a deficit in mitochondrial function in the brain that shows itself in one way, and in the liver in another way, and so on. But all of these, they're all caused by some sort of a dysfunction in adequate energy production in order to maintain the necessary functions of those cells.
So let's talk for a minute, Kristina, about how do we support our mitochondria? It's obviously incredibly important. What are some of the steps that we need to take and that your book covers about how to support our mitochondrial health?
Thank you for that question. And that is, I think that is really one of the reasons that I think everybody, if you don't get my book, somehow get an understanding of this particular question. How do you support how to best support your mitochondria? So before I get there, I just want to talk about, so oxygen is one of the, we breathe in oxygen in order to fuel this ATP production, right? So it's absolutely necessary for the bioenergetics of our cells. However, it does come with a cost. So as we breathe in this oxygen and as it makes its way through the mitochondrial membrane, just through the process of metabolism, you have what are caused and causal to this metabolic processes that are called reactive oxygen species. So these are basically sort of the equivalent of if you run an engine in a car, you have the exhaust. They're sort of these byproducts of metabolism. And under normal circumstances, we have adequate antioxidants that, such as superoxide dismutase and glutathione, and all these sort of our own internal and exogenous antioxidants that we consume through food that basically are able to balance the reactive oxygen species with antioxidants. So the mitochondrial theory of aging basically posits that the entire process of aging and disease have to do with an overabundance of reactive oxygen species compared to antioxidants. And that's why we basically age, or age too fast, or basically come down with a disease. Basically, there's a disease created within us because of the imbalance of these two, the reactive oxygen species and antioxidants. So basically, what you want to do is, if you think about this in terms of the 5 pillars of health, which are diet, exercise, stress management, sleep, proper sleep, and toxin avoidance. Think of those 5 pillars. What you want to do is you want to, in every one of those pillars, do everything that you can to nourish your mitochondria. So if we want to start with, let's say, nutrition, which is the top one, I would say, next to exercise, what I write in my book in detail, and I can give it in a nutshell right now: try your best to eat a Mediterranean style diet. It has been studied prolifically and it has shown that out of all of the other diets, it has the most beneficial compounds, and it really fosters mitochondrial health. And what is a what is a Mediterranean diet? Essentially, it's real, fresh, whole foods, predominantly vegetables, colorful vegetables, fruits, seeds, nuts, healthy oils like olive oil, lots of olive oil, and also healthy lean meats and healthy fats. It's very common sense. It's basically eating as you would in the Mediterranean,
It's
surrounding
good food, right? It's really good food.
It's just eating good food. So that's number one. Number two, of course, is exercise. Movement is medicine for mitochondria, period. If you can do something consistently, walking every day is actually the most unbelievably profoundly important thing you can do. Walk after you eat, before you eat, during the day. Try to do it a couple of times. If you can only do it once, but do it consistently. And beyond that, I have others. I have the high intensity interval training, resistance. All of these are wonderful. But seriously, the blue zones have indicated, where people live to be into their hundreds, well into their hundreds, that walking is one of the most profoundly important things you can do.
Yeah.
And then stress management, I talk about all the things you have to do. Chronic stress is deadly to mitochondria.
Yeah.
It produces cortisol. Actually, cortisol, which is a stress hormone, is produced in the mitochondria. And it's a biological remnant of times when we had to run away from, lions and tigers, where we had to rev up our mitochondria to be able to run away from these stressors. But that should be an acute situation and then over in a short period of time. When we live with chronic stress and we're pumping out cortisol all the time, you're revving up your mitochondria, and they're creating reactive oxygen species all the time, which, as I mentioned, is foundational to disease and aging. So you want to limit your stress, your chronic stress, and take action to be able to do that.
Awesome.
And yeah,
no, go ahead.
And sorry, and I just want to get to the last two. Sleep is when sleep hygiene. I know it's probably well known how important sleep is, but it's truly, truly important. It's when your cells regenerate, where your mitochondria regenerate, and you want to make sure that you're getting your optimal sleep every night if possible. And then last but not least, toxin reduction and elimination, or at least, awareness of how, what you're consuming, what you're surrounded with. your mitochondria are orders of magnitude more susceptible to toxins than your own cells. So anything that you do, whether it's, heavy metals or BPAs or EMFs or any of these, environmental toxins that we're surrounded with, they are orders of magnitude more damaging to your mitochondria. So you really want to be very aware to reduce or eliminate as many of these toxins as you can.
And your book is certainly really comprehensive on each one of these issues, right? Each one is a chapter: the food, the exercise, the toxins, the stress. So if there's, I want to first see if there's one message that you want people to walk away from this interview with or from the book. What is that?
Thank you for asking that. And if I had to say in a nutshell, every single decision that you make, if you want to be healthy, if you truly want to be healthy, every single decision you make, from what you eat, what you don't eat, what you do within your day, every single aspect of your life, you should be asking yourself, does it nurture my mitochondria or does it harm them? Period. And if you cannot answer that question adequately, for example, if you're thinking about a drug that you've been prescribed or whatever, you need to be the sleuth and determine how it affects your mitochondria. Period.
Okay. Great advice. So if people want to buy the book, tell us where to do that. If they want to reach out to you, I think you're also doing coaching at this point. Give us information about how we can be in touch with you.
Yes, you can find my book on Amazon, Beyond Just Genes. That's probably the easiest way to find it. And I have some social media handles, which are Kristina Kristen Wellness, Kristina Kristen Wellness on Instagram, on TikTok, and you can reach out to me and message me if you want to, if you like to consult or just connect.
Awesome. Kristina, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for writing this important book and for really opening our eyes to the critical nature of mitochondria in everything about life. So great to see you.
Great to see you, Mary. Thank you so much for having me today. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
We are live. Tell everyone who you are, please.
I am Dr. Tara Pridgett.
And you're a pediatrician?
I am a pediatrician.
And you're
board certified pediatrician, 23 years.
23 years,
Yes.
Okay. Let's go back and talk about what kind of a pediatrician you were and what happened and where you are now.
So I had all the traditional training. I went to medical school, did a residency program, was pretty much whatever the AAP said was our standard, American Academy of Pediatrics. That was our standard of practice. And
What about vaccines? What was your training on vaccines?
How to use the schedule. Primarily, that was the training. Not so much about side effects, risk factors, who should, who shouldn't. This is the CDC schedule. These are the ages at which we typically give this. This is how to use the catch-up schedule. That was primarily my training. And how the vaccines.
Did anyone at any point in your class or whatever you call it question that are there any side effects or anything, or do you not remember?
Not that I remember.
We just did as you're told.
Yep. It is I was told. Yeah. So practice for many years. I just kind of as a free thinker, and allowing families to share kind of different things they wanted to do, or in terms of just health management. I was agreeable to that. So I actually kind of started families coming in that didn't want to do traditional vaccine schedules, and I was receptive to that because I believe in ultimately I just believe in a parent's right to choose for their children. I view myself as someone who partners with the family, and I don't like to tell you what to do. Just like as a parent, I don't really want you telling me what to do. You can give me advice and I can decide that way. But so I was open to just kind of hearing alternative options that parents wanted to use, and was doing that. So I had a reputation of being one of those providers, and I had a lot of families that didn't vaccinate, families that did some things and not others, and families that did everything. And that was fine. In the practice I was in, we were all considered autonomous in that regard, even though we were under the same roof working together. But you know, every person has their own personality and style of work, and so that was what I was doing. Got to the point where some of the partners in the practice, I was not a partner in the practice because I was a part-time provider, because I also had a family of my own and I wanted to be mom as much as physician, and so I didn't have that pull in the practice. But there was a vote that came up about how we were going to handle kids that were not vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and the partners decided everyone follows the CDC schedule or you don't remain a patient in the practice. Of course, barring you don't have a medical exemption. So when that happened, I felt like I'm not able to practice in the style that suits me, so I don't have autonomy. And that was my kind of journey to leave.
What year was that with this type of?
2019, right before the pandemic. So it's an interesting thing because like we didn't know COVID was coming, but it was coming. And it was just interesting in that time out of practice, because when I resigned from the practice, it was December of 2019, because I wasn't leaving the state and my intention was to open an independent practice. My contract required me to not compete for a year, so I couldn't work in the same community for a year, not knowing COVID was coming. And just in that time, as the mandates were coming along and the masking, and I'm like, am I in the twilight zone? Because we're not following things that we learned in terms of science of what masking is designed for and how effective it is and isn't. And so it was just more eye-opening. And so when I knew as I was planning to start my new practice, how was I going to do it differently? So what I do is a direct primary care model. I don't fool with insurance because insurance dictates too many rules about how you can take care of people. And I really wanted that dynamic to be just between myself and parents and patients, to be able to determine what is best for them. And hence I went independent and opened my own practice in April of 2021 and have lots of healthy unvaccinated patients as a result of that. So I just really believe parents get to decide, and I want parents to have informed consent with whatever they're doing in the care of their children, from deciding on a medication or a procedure, and to understand the rationale for why or why not to do something. And I think that's key to giving good care.
When you were at the other practice, or even the practice you're at now, did you see parents come in and say, listen, my child had a seizure following vaccines or this or that? Did you start to see the injury coming in?
If most pediatricians are honest, they've seen injury. I remember a particular instance where a young lady I'd seen all of her life from birth up. She's mid-teens at this point. Mom came back in with concerns that she was having some neurologic problems following the HPV vaccine. And this mom especially wanted to meet with myself and one of the nurse practitioners that I worked with to just share that her concerns that there's something different here and my child has been impacted. And even with seeing that, there was that initial, just based on my training, the original training, that for the greater good, I'm sorry this happened, or it seems, I'm not going to deny that there's some changes for your child. She wasn't walking normally like she had been before. She had weakness, fatigue, conditions that because I know I've seen her over the years. This has been a fairly healthy young lady, and now we have a change. So I couldn't deny that I had seen a change in this individual. But even then, there was a little bit of hardening because of the training that you're told, well, we do things, it's not that something bad never happens, but for the greater good, we're supposed to continue to do this. So that mom, she was very compelling, and she's like, I'm not telling people not to vaccinate, but I just want you to understand this is what happened to my kid when we did this. And so initially, again, there was some kind of hardness of heart, but then just really over time, her story always sticks out to me as I think about what I do now in terms of acknowledging that parents, should know what the risks are. I didn't even know what the risks were at the time. The pharmaceutical reps come in and they say, this is what's recommended. This is the ages that we promoted. If you get it by this age, it's 2 doses. If you wait till this age, it's 3 doses. Those were the kind of details we were given, but not really any information on safety.
So, as a pediatrician, do you see any difference between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated children?
Absolutely. The unvaccinated children are by far healthier, happier, bright. I see those infants and they are bright, they are curious, they are absorbing things, they're just enjoying good health. I don't see a lot of the things that we now attribute to common childhood illnesses. I just don't see a lot of it in the unvaxxed babies or kids that I see.
And in this new clinic that you have, or whatever you call it, do you have as much SIDS?
I've not seen, fortunately, even in the other practice, I didn't see many cases of SIDS, but in my 2 years with the new practice, I've seen 0.
Well, what advice as a pediatrician would you give parents as we go into the fall, winter, where we know the media hype is going to be intense for RSV and kids are going to get sick?
Yes.
They did in my era,
Right.
and they're going to again.
Right.
What advice do you give them if they're choosing not to vaccinate? What advice to not fall for the fear?
To, 1, trust your instincts. 2, ask questions. It's partner with people that you feel respect you and are open to hearing your concerns. Talk to the elders in your tribe or in community who can reassure you that these things are normal. Expect that children will catch infections and get colds, and they also recover beautifully. I try my best to not intervene and let nature take its course. There are times when we need to do interventions, but for the most part, if you can keep them hydrated and comfortable, this too will pass. And that's kind of my advice.
Don't do what I did as a mother, which is rush to my pediatrician with my babies every time they sneezed and get more antibiotics and more antibiotics.
I don't subscribe to that at all. Infection is part of the body's process of maturing, and babies and children get colds and viruses, and I really just have, in my own practice, I have my outlook is that I don't give a lot of medications, and I don't encourage a lot of medications, and again, the keys are hydration and keeping them comfortable and being patient.
You know what we want to do? What we should do is get a whole box of Brian Hooker's Vaxxed Unvaxxed books for in your waiting room, in your surgery. Vax 2 piled up. Educate yourself, these young parents.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm so honoured to be sitting here with you because there's nothing more exciting than a good pediatrician. I don't meet very many of them. But I'm so grateful to you for the work you're doing looking after the babies and all the healthy babies that we're seeing.
Thank you. And I just wanted to share that there are good physicians out there. It's been a challenge because you hear people talk negatively about doctors, and very much warranted, but just know there are some bright lights out there.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the negativity. When I tell people stay away from pediatricians, I still stand by that unless there's someone like you, because honestly, you're the frontline people we go to with our most precious gifts, and they're dying or brain injured or paralyzed, and the outcome is not good. So when we do find a good pediatrician like you, we're thrilled. So thank you, and thank you for being so brave to do that as well. Must take a lot of courage. I'm sure you get a lot of trolls on your back, and you certainly will do after this interview. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The truth is, vaccine injuries are real and they've been ignored.
These childhood vaccinations, the people of America are telling us they are not safe and effective. We are seriously concerned at Children's Health Defense about the disinformation and misinformation out there.
Society does not want to acknowledge vaccine injury, period. My son's life has been ruined physically and emotionally, and he is persecuted for the mere fact that he exists.
After 8 years of litigation, HHS conceded by preponderance of the evidence that Chris died from her HPV vaccinations.
Parents deserve the truth. We deserve real informed consent, because no parent should have to live the nightmare I do.
I am heartbroken to hear these stories, and it makes me want to do something.
How about we ban pharmaceutical ads on TV?
I've advocated it, and you have a co-sponsor.
The government has decided that this particular industry doesn't have to be liable to anybody.
I am extremely suspicious, as a lawyer, of immunity that is granted in any blanket way across the board to any manufacturer or to anyone.
So if we're gonna do something, the North Star has gotta be medical freedom. I get to decide what's good for me and my family with proper information. And if I'm given improper information, just like in any other industry, there's gotta be accountability.
No more Pfizer-sponsored science. We need independent science.
I am competing against a pharmaceutical lobby of 1,600 lobbyists. That's 3 lobbyists for each member of Congress. This is insane.
Everybody sitting here, bar 2, vaccinated their families with catastrophic results. Over 12,000 signatures on those 2 buses of death, death, death. When will enough be enough? How many more buses? So this has to stop. And we implore you, please, to follow us at Children's Health Defense, at least break down the truth and get to the truth behind the science of what is really happening.